Hello and welcome to our Teaching for Success Inclusive podcast series. I'm your host, Rosa Kemerembe. Today we're tackling a tough and sensitive topic that has been making headlines across Uganda. We're talking about the recent incident at Mount St. Henry's High School in Mukono in Uganda, where at least 10 senior 4 students 16 to 17-year-olds were indefinitely suspended over allegations of drug use, sharing pornography, and organizing house parties during their school holiday. This situation has sparked outrage, confusion, and some very important questions for educators, parents, and policymakers. What is the right way to handle students' behavior that happens off school property? What does progressive discipline actually look like? And most importantly, how do we balance accountability with commitment to not ruining a child's or a young person's future? Today we'll break down what allegedly happened, analyze where the process went wrong, discuss the legal duties of schools in Uganda, and examine parents' legal responsibilities and offer best practices for turning this into a learning opportunity for everyone. Let's dive in. First, let's set the scene based on what's been reported in the media. According to multiple news outlets, the school administration issued suspension letters dated August 3rd, 2026. The allegations are very serious: using illegal drugs, sharing pornographic material, and organizing house parties during the holiday. However, it is crucial to emphasize that we are working with allegations as presented in the media, not established facts. We have not heard the students' side of the story. The school's response has drawn sharp criticism from parents. A key point of contention is that the alleged misconduct occurred during the school holidays away from school property. Parents have argued they were not consulted before the suspensions were imposed and that the school acted punitively without a proper hearing for their children. One parent was quoted as saying, "I wish the school administration had contacted us before making a decision instead of calling us to pick our children and presenting us with a suspension letter." The statement alone tells us that the first communication many parents received was the suspension letter itself. The school, however, stated that the conduct tarnished their reputation and violated their values. Very valid. In the suspension letter, the head teacher made it clear the students' actions were deemed unacceptable. That's an understatement. Their behavior was atrocious. While the students will be allowed to sit for their Uganda examinations, board exams, the conditions are incredibly harsh. They are required to travel from home to the exam center with a security escort and report 15 minutes early, and parents are supposed to clear outstanding fees of 1.29 million shillings. Parents are understandably outraged and are asking, are our kids criminals? Why do we need security to escort them to the exam hall? That question is at the heart of this debate. Now, let's analyze where this process fell short. And I want to be clear, we're not condemning the school, we're here to learn, but we must be honest about the missteps. First, parents were not approached before the suspension. This is a fundamental error of the school. The parents' first interaction with the school regarding this issue was to receive a suspension letter, not a phone call, not an invitation to a meeting. As one parent rightly pointed out, the alleged misconduct happened during the holidays while the children were under their care. The school should have contacted the parents first to discuss the matter, present concerns, and work towards a solution. Instead, they made a unilateral decision that left parents feeling blindsided and defensive. Second, did the school actually investigate? Well, it claims that it conducted investigations that established the misconduct, but Did they hear the students' sides of the story? The parents explicitly argued that the students were not given a fair opportunity to explain themselves before the suspensions were imposed. The school has not publicly confirmed whether the students were interviewed or not to present their version of the story. In any disciplinary process, the accused must be given a chance to be heard. That is not just good practice, it's a principle of natural justice. Third, the handling of parents was very problematic. Reports indicate that parents were met individually, even though they wanted to deal with the issue collectively as a group. This is not good practice. A group meeting can sometimes descend into chaos, which is probably what the school was worried about. But meeting parents individually without a collective forum for shared concerns creates distrust and suspicion. The school should have facilitated a group meeting where parents could hear their concerns together, followed by individual private sessions to discuss every specific child's case. So, what should the school have done? Let's look at the best practices for progressive discipline. First, before issuing any suspension, the school should have contacted each parent individually to inform them of the allegations and invite them to a meeting. This respects the parents' role as primary caregivers or guardians of the children or students and builds a partnership rather than an adversarial relationship. Next, the school should have conducted a fair investigation by interviewing each student separately to get their side of the story. This is not about catching them out. It's about understanding what happened and who was involved. Students should have been allowed to have a trusted adult present during interviews as well. Following that, the school should have held joint meetings with parents and students. After the investigation, the school should have brought everyone together, the student, the parents, and the administration in one space. The evidence should be presented, the student be given a chance to respond, and the school a chance to explain the consequences. This would have ensured transparency and fairness. Then, the school should impose consequences, not just a punishment. The students deserved consequences. A suspension was extremely appropriate, but it should have been for a definite period or a defined period, not an indefinite period. An indefinite suspension is punitive, and it doesn't teach the children anything. It also robs the student of crucial learning time before their exams. A week or two of suspension with a clear pathway back is more constructive. Furthermore, the school should work with parents to support the students. This means ensuring that they receive counseling and understand the dangers of their actions. The school can draw clear boundaries, informing all students and parents that such behavior is unacceptable and that any repetition will lead to more severe consequences, including possible expulsion from the school. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the school must avoid public shaming. The parents alleged that the students were publicly humiliated by being made to line up before an assembly of over 20,000 learners made up of their peers and referred to as dancers of Bilmansulo. This is deeply damaging. Shaming tears students down. It shreds their self-worth. It does not build them up. Our goal should be to correct behavior, not to ruin students' reputations. They've done a good job by themselves with their behavior at home. Discipline should be firm but private. Now let's talk about the parents, because while we have rightly criticized the school's procedure, we cannot ignore that parents also bear significant responsibility in this situation. There was a clear failure of supervision during the school holiday. Police have explicitly warned that some parents negligently expose children to risks, okay, by maybe sending them on errands at night, leaving them unattended at home, and making them vulnerable to situations like this. In this case, the children were allegedly able to organize house parties involving drugs and pornography while under their parents' care. This represents a clear failure on the part of parents to exercise the proper parental guidance and supervision critical to preventing young people from engaging in criminal behavior. What parents should do next time is, first and foremost, they need to establish clear boundaries and supervision in their homes. Parents must be present and engaged with their children in the holidays. Parents must understand that prevention begins at home. This means knowing where your child is at all times, who they're with at all times, and setting clear rules about attending parties or gatherings, monitoring their phone, internet usage to prevent access to pornography. And they need to have consequences, and the children need to know what the consequences will be if they cross the boundaries. It's important to remember that parties and social gatherings are not crimes. But when they involve drugs and pornography, they become serious child protection issues. Secondly, parents should communicate with the school proactively rather than waiting for the school to act. Parents should have informed the school immediately they discovered what happened during the holidays concerning their kids, work collaboratively with the school to address these issues before they escalated and went into the media. Understand that a child's actions outside of school hours can still affect the school's reputation and discipline policies. Thirdly, parents must take accountability and not be defensive. When concerns are raised, listen to the school's concerns as well without immediately becoming defensive. Investigate the allegations with your child rather than dismissing them. Work with the school to implement appropriate consequences. And remember, parents, it's not for you to make the consequences at school. It's for the school's administrators. Yours is to have consequences in your home. The parents in this case argue that the alleged misconduct occurred during the school holiday, away from school property, and while their students were under their care. But that argument actually strengthens the case that parents bear primary responsibility. Finally, parents must demonstrate reform and support. Parents who show they are taking the matter seriously by implementing consequences at home and discussing those consequences with the school, working with the school to demonstrate due diligence, will make the case for their students being allowed back to school sooner stronger. Parents who fail to show such commitment risk the school taking harsher action. Let's be honest, everyone involved in this situation could have done better. The school failed by not involving parents early, by not following due process, by not reporting to the authorities, and by resorting to public shaming. The parents failed by not exercising adequate supervision during the holidays and by not fulfilling their legal duty of care as parents. As the law clearly states, parents are the first line of accountability for their children's welfare. The students failed terribly by making poor choices that could have serious consequences for their future. But they are young, and teens push boundaries. Doesn't make it right. Hopefully, they have learned from this. So what's the path forward? The school should review its policies on student discipline, particularly regarding off-campus behavior. They should establish clear, transparent procedures that involve parents early and prioritize the child's best interests. They should also ensure all staff are trained on their legal duty to report to child protection authorities if it necessitates them to do so. Parents must take accountability and work with the school, not against it. They should support their children in showing genuine reform. And for the students, this is a tough lesson in boundaries and consequences. They must understand that their actions have repercussions, even if their behavior is outside of school hours. But they should be given a chance to prove they have learned from their mistakes. That doesn't mean they do not face consequences of their behavior like school suspension. Progressive discipline is not about being soft. It's about being smart. It's about teaching, not just punishing. It's about protecting the reputation of the school while also safeguarding the future of the child. The law places the primary responsibility for child welfare on parents. When children engage in misconduct during the holidays while under parental care, the parents are the first in line of accountability, not the school. But our ultimate goal must always be to correct behavior and mend relationships between the students, parents, and the school. Also, build better futures for these young students. We want to correct their behavior, not ruin their reputation. We want to mend relationships, not break them. And we want to draw boundaries, but also extend grace when reform is shown. At the heart of this entire situation are young teenagers who are at a developmental stage where pushing boundaries is almost always expected. They are testing limits, exploring independence, and sometimes making terrible decisions in the process. That does not excuse their behavior, but it must inform our response as parents and educators. The right consequence delivered at the right time in the right way has the power to transform a young person's life. A consequence that's too harsh destroys their spirit and robs them of their future. A consequence that's too soft teaches nothing. A consequence that is delivered too late loses its impact. And a consequence delivered publicly humiliates rather than corrects. A consequence delivered privately with dignity is what will build character. Parents, you must take accountability. Your children are your responsibility, especially during the holidays when they're under your roof. The law says so. Common sense says so. When your child makes mistakes, do not rush to defend them blindly. Work with the school, work with the authorities. Show your child that their actions have consequences. But also show them that you will walk with them through the process of reform. Schools, your job is not to punish and dismiss. Your job is to correct, give consequences, and restore relationships. You have a duty to protect your reputation and the safety of other students, but you also have a duty to give young people a chance to learn from their mistakes. Indefinite suspensions, public shaming, and treating students like criminals do not teach lessons. Instead, they breed resentment and destroy their futures. Students, your actions have consequences. The choices you make today determine your tomorrow. They affect your future in ways you don't yet understand. But know this, one poor decision does not define you. You can learn, you can grow if you choose to, and you can become better. The question is whether you're willing to do the work. So here's the final truth. We live in a world where young people will make mistakes. That's part of growing up. The question is not whether they'll push boundaries, they will. The question is whether we as parents, educators, and society will respond in a way that teaches them to be better rather than breaking them down or being too soft on them. Discipline without dignity is not discipline, it's distraction. Consequences without compassion are not correction, they are cruelty. Accountability without support is not growth, it's abandonment. Let us choose to be the adults who build young people up even when we must correct them. Let us choose consequences that teach, not that destroy. Let us choose to remember that every child is a work in progress and that our job is to help them become the best version of themselves. Thank you for listening to this episode of Teaching for Success. Join us next time as we continue to explore critical issues in education. Remember, teaching is not just about imparting knowledge, it's about building character, nurturing future leaders. And we have to get this right. Until next time, this is Rosa Kemerembe, your host. Take care.